Welcome to Root Cause Medicine, presented by Spirit of Health, transforming lives through real health solutions. Well, welcome everyone. This is Vaughn. Welcome to the Root Cause Medicine podcast. Today we're honored to have Dr. Sachin Patel with us. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Patel.
It's my pleasure. Such an honor to be here with you, Vaughn. And please call me Sachin. Thank you.
I will. So I'm going to read Sachin's bio, but I want to start with just mentioning that I met Sachin at a conference at Cellcore, and we really connected at the conference. He spoke on breath work, which is our topic today. We're going to be talking about the power of oxygen, the power of breath work. Crucially important topic. It really resonated with me. I learned a lot. It was very empowering, and Sachin was extremely generous in offering his time. He had dinner with us and shared so much at dinner that he really didn't even eat his meal. So just a very kind and generous man. So Sachin, I'm going to go ahead and read your bio. Sachin Patel is a father, husband, philanthropist, functional medicine practice, success coach, speaker, author, breathwork facilitator, and plant medicine advocate. I love that. I'm definitely into the plant medicine. Sachin is convinced that the doctor of the future is the patient, and he has committed himself to helping others raise their consciousness, activate their inner doctor, and initiate their deepest healing through the use of lifestyle and breath work. Sachin founded the Living Proof Institute, through which he pioneered a revolutionary approach to patient-centered healthcare. Sachin coaches hundreds of practitioners around the world so that they are empowered to deliver affordable and inspired care to their communities through his Perfect Practice Mentorship Program. He is an advocate of transforming the healthcare paradigm, and he has devoted his life to the betterment of healthcare for both patients and practitioners. So, yeah, Sachin's in high demand, and honored to have you here. So again, thank you for being willing to join us on this podcast.
Of course, my pleasure.
Yeah. So we are talking about oxygen. We're talking about the power of breath work. And I think it'd be great, Sachin, if you could just share maybe a little bit of your story of how this became relevant to you, this became important to you, because it's if you go to the level of learning something, to the point of advocating something, to the point of teaching others this practice, then clearly it impacted you. So how did this simple concept of oxygen and breath work start in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking that. So for me, breathing has impacted all the most important people in my life. It's impacted my son. It's impacted my wife. It's impacted me personally. And it's something that has impacted the clients that I coach and the practitioners that I coach as well. And really where it started was by me taking a Wim Hof training that was happening in Toronto, just north of Toronto, in a place called Orangeville. In the middle of winter, we, two of my friends and I went to a breathing kind of like urban retreat, if you will. And we learned the Wim Hof breathing technique. And at the end of it, we were all jumping in this little kiddie pool filled with ice in the middle of winter outdoors. Yeah. And it was just like a totally invigorating experience. That was my first like formal breathwork experience. And then I had another experience, which was taking my son to the dentist. And when we took him to the dentist for the first time, he actually had a ton of cavities, despite the fact that he was eating healthy. And despite the fact that he didn't eat, junk foods and candies and sugars and things like that. And we were kind of perplexed, but we also got news that his mouth was too small. So his upper palate was too small, and that was leading to an overcrowding of his teeth, which meant that every dentist that we went to, until we found the right one, suggested that we remove a couple of his teeth. So his face would, or his teeth would come down. And, as a chiropractor, I realized that there's got to be more to this story. Like, there's no way that we're born with too many teeth. And why would that be the case? That makes absolutely zero sense. It's like saying we're born with too many fingers, right? It just doesn't make sense. So we, at the time I started learning James Nestor's work through my friend Joe Polish and Genius Network. James came and gave a keynote there, and it really helped me understand how our breath affects our physiology, how it affects our facial structure, how it also affects our physical structures in our body, and how the breath serves more than just the purpose of gaseous exchange. It actually is one of the key driving factors and keystones in overall health and wellness. And then in learning about James's book, I realized that my son was a habitual mouth breather. And that's something I had to own because I didn't know any different. And just like most people think, I'm breathing, so I should be okay. That's not something I need to work on. However, they say that the answers are right under our noses. And literally the answer to many people's chronic and even acute health challenges can be addressed through optimizing breathing. And certainly if you can't fix them, you can steer any health condition in the right direction. And then the third person that was affected by this was my wife. And my wife had, always kind of struggled with chronic low-grade anxiety. She was always on the edge just a little bit. And she had, taken supplements to help with that. She had done mindfulness and meditation to help with that. But it turns out that she was also a habitual mouth breather. And that was causing her low-grade anxiety. And so we discovered through seeing an airway specialized dentist that she actually had a tongue tie. And that tongue tie wasn't only causing her to be more likely to be a mouth breather, but it was also causing her to have a hard time with her neck and shoulders. She had chronic neck and shoulder pain that just wouldn't go away. And me being a chiropractor, you would think that I'd be able to help her. And any help that I offered her was only temporary. So by snipping her tongue tie, we were able to release so much tension in her neck and shoulders, but also make it easier for her to soothe and relax herself by being able to place her tongue fully in the roof of her mouth, which is a relaxation position of the tongue. And then for me personally, it's impacted me because I used to snore. And snoring, as we all know, is a dysfunctional way of breathing at night. And, you can only imagine the implications of that. I was never a morning person. I'd wake up more tired than when I went to bed. And I just couldn't make sense of it until I realized that it was my snoring that was contributing to it. And since then, that's been resolved. And then so many of my patients, as I started, asking the right questions, like I was never asking questions about how they were breathing up until this point in my almost now 20-year career. So it was only like 5 years ago that I started asking about their breathing. It just made a huge shift for them. And so when we breathe, every breath we take is a conscious opportunity for us to shift into a parasympathetic state or shift into a sympathetic state. So it's one of those things that has unlimited benefit potential, and it's one of those keystone lead dominoes in our health that impacts every system in our body. And I'm sure as we get through this conversation, people will clearly understand why, and hopefully they'll be as excited as I am about this. And really, like, I never anticipated that I would be having these conversations and doing all these podcasts and speaking in all these stages about breathing. I was hoping somebody else would know the things that I'm going to share with you today. But because of my experience in head and neck anatomy, I used to teach head and neck anatomy. Because of my experience in being interested in physical health, because of my approach of holistic wellness and functional medicine, and because of my constant pursuit of the zenith of both simplicity and sophistication, that's how I stumbled across breath. And breath can affect us in so many different ways. It can affect our physical health, as I mentioned. It can affect our facial structure. It can affect our autonomic nervous system. It can affect our the chemicals that we make, our neurotransmitters, and other biological molecules that we make, like nitric oxide. And it also impacts our immune system. It affects our lymphatic system. Our lungs are our primary source of organ of detoxification. So you usually think of detox, we think of the gut, the liver, and the kidneys, but 70% of detox actually takes place through the lungs. And so it's just like one of those things that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then because of my vast, different experiences in life, and because I was seeing this from every angle, like how this affects children, how this affects relationships, how this affects sleep quality, how this affects metabolic health, how it impacts lymphatic health and circulatory health. I'm like, wow, like if nobody's talking about this, this is a huge opportunity for people to participate in their own healing. And it's free, it's scalable. Everyone's got the equipment. I don't have to ship anything. And once you learn it, you don't have to keep learning it. You just practice it.
Yeah.
And it's timeless, which means that if you learn it now, the concepts and the principles aren't going to change a year from now or 10 years from now. Like diet is constantly changing. It's one of those things that you can do every single moment of every single day. And when we do it with awareness and consciousness, it's an opportunity to literally change the trajectory of our quality of life and health.
Yeah. Amen. Well, that's a great intro. My story, where I'm at in my life right now, is similar in that I live in Kansas City, and Kansas City has a couple million people and hundreds of dentists, and we drive to Oklahoma City to go see a dentist because she's an airway specialist, and she's amazing. And the reason we love going to her is because she's not, sounds ironic, right? She's not as focused. I don't want to say she's not at all, but she's not really focused on our children's teeth or ours. She's focused on airways, breathing, nasal passages, esophagus, jaw structure. Is her jaw wide enough? We have a similar story. I don't know if I shared it with you, Sachin, but we went to a dentist here in Kansas City. They wanted to pull my daughter's baby teeth to make room. And I had the same thought. I'm like, I don't think the way God designed us is that we have too many teeth or we have to pull them to make room. It didn't make sense to me. Not that it couldn't work or be helpful, but there had to be another solution. There had to be something else going on. And really the challenge was that her jaw was too crowded. And so we needed to widen her palate and help her breathing. And so now, like, we're in this journey right now. Our kids are 11, 9, and 7. We're going to Oklahoma to go to the dentist. My wife has had her frenectomy, right? She's had her tongue tie release. My son has had his tongue tie release. Last week, my 11-year-old daughter had her tongue tie release, and I'm next on the list. I actually have an appointment coming up next week to get started in the process of getting my tongue tie release, because here I am 50 years old, and since we've learned this and gone to different dentists, they're actually like, Vaughn, yours is actually the worst. So so even at 50 years old, I understand it, and I know that there can be benefits and changes to my health and my longevity, even at my age, to just, hey, let's go ahead and get this procedure done so I can get the tongue resting on the roof of my mouth properly. I can start breathing properly, because as we all do, we want to optimize our health, our longevity, our plan, our purpose for why we're on this earth. We want our kids to get the best start humanly possible. And so we have to learn all these things. And it's kind of like you had kind of alluded to earlier. We don't know what we don't know, but now that we know it, we can't unknow it. So, we need to pursue it because we want what's best for our family. We want what's best for other people. And so anyway, I thought I would share that because we're on a similar trajectory, at least on the dental side of things, of understanding breathing as a crucial part of jaw structure and nasal breathing versus mouth breathing. And I want to just mention to the audience, I'll never forget this. When Sachin did his presentation at Cellcore, he showed a before picture and an after picture. And it's mind-blowing. I mean, maybe if I can find a way to snip it, I'll put it in the notes or something. But like, you had a very narrow face and jaw structure and changed your breathing technique. And you didn't even do the dental jaw structure things, right? You didn't use devices or anything like that. Changed your breathing, and your face now, plump, round, healthy, looks totally different than you did a few years ago.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, because I think people think it's too late to change.
Right.
And you can literally change the way you look. And when I show pictures to my son from even like 5 to 10 years ago, he almost doesn't recognize me. And I would argue that if I had a facial recognition device, that it may not recognize me, because it can pick up those subtle changes. So it's never too late. And I would say that, the sooner you start, the better, right? Because, had my wife had her tongue tie addressed when she was very young, like as an infant, for example, who knows, she might be a slightly different person. And she definitely wouldn't have needed all the dental work. What's really interesting that you bring up about the dentist not focusing on your teeth is that when you learn how to breathe correctly, the oral cavity is self-sustaining, right? So think about animals in nature. They don't brush their teeth. They don't go to a dentist, right? They're not flossing.
Totally.
Like, these are all man-made constructs. In fact, my parents grew up, my grandparents, all my aunts and uncles grew up in India, and none of them had cavities until they started brushing their teeth.
Wow.
So in India, what they would use is something called a datan, which is just a branch of a neem tree. And it sounds kind of archaic or barbaric when you think about it. But you would just basically chew on this branch. And then by chewing, you're strengthening your dental structures. You're increasing the strength of your teeth and the enamel and everything that's there. The oils from the branch, the neem oil, is optimizing our microbiome and killing off any negative bacteria. And because of that, you're creating the right dental structure and the right facial structure. Because nowadays, the reason children's jaws are so much smaller than they used to be is because not just because of nutrient deficiencies like Weston A. Price would indicate, but it's because of mechanically processed food. So if we're eating things like avocados and yogurt and having our kids drink smoothies, they're not nutrient depleted. They're depleted of stimulating their jaw to form correctly.
Right.
So my parents never had cavities, aunts, uncles, no cavities, didn't even have a dentist growing up because they didn't need one, because without even realizing it, they were creating the proper facial structure for themselves. And that they all have, perfectly straight teeth, no braces, no orthodontics, no appliances, nothing. And a lot of that has to do, if not most of it has to do with proper breathing.
Yeah.
Because when our tongue is placed in the roof of our mouth, it pushes our jaw forward and it pushes our dental arch outwards. And then when you combine that with eating hard foods or just, kind of chewing on that branch every day to brush your teeth with, so to speak, it ends up, strengthening and optimizing the flora in the mouth. The other thing that happens is when we breathe through our mouth, which is possible when, the airway is interesting because we will breathe through the path of least resistance. So if somebody has a narrow airway because they're mouth breathers, then it's just going to feel more comfortable for them to breathe through their mouth. And what happens is that dries out the saliva. And because that dries out the saliva, it creates an environment for bacteria to grow and cause cavities. And so mouth breathing is actually the number one cause of cavities. And one thing that it's important for people to know is that we're always concerned about what goes into our body. Well, we consume 30 pounds of air every day. So you actually consume more air than anything else that goes into your body. And so it's vital that we pay attention to where that air is coming in from, because our mouth dirties the air and our nose, when we breathe through it, purifies the air. Wow. And if we can just, help people make that switch, then immediately they start to benefit from better breathing dynamics, and their immune system health improves, their obviously their mitochondrial health improves, their energy production improves, metabolic function starts to improve, their nervous system shifts into a more parasympathetic state. I mean, all the goals that somebody has when they come and see you, Vaughn, when they come and see me, or if we work with them online, whatever the case may be, all their goals live on the parasympathetic side of the fence. Nobody comes to us and says, listen, I want to be hyperventilating all the time. I want more cavities. I want less blood flow to my brain and periphery. I want less blood flow to my genitals. I want to have shitty digestion. I want to have sluggish, bowel movements. I want to have a suppressed immune system. Nobody comes and tells us they want those things, but those are all the byproducts of being sympathetic dominant.
Right.
And the one way that our body demonstrates what state of the autonomic tone we're in is by paying attention to someone's breath. So I can look at someone and pay attention to the way they're breathing, and that will be a clue into the state of their nervous system. The way somebody breathes is a window into the state of their nervous system.
Wow.
And so if I was sitting here and I was like, guess what? That would tell you something about me. But if I'm sitting here nice and calm, you can barely even tell that I'm breathing. And I might be doing that consciously or unconsciously. That's going to tell you the state that my nervous system is moving in.
Yeah.
One of the first things our autonomic nervous system does to change our physiology is it changes the way we breathe. So, for example, if a lion walked into your office right now, into the studio where you are, you would immediately gasp because that would be the fastest way to increase blood pressure. The lungs would expand rapidly, squeeze your heart, and then you'd start increasing your respiratory rate because that's going to help pump your heart, even though it's arguable that the heart's a pump. The next thing that would happen is you would then consciously realize what's happening. So our breath actually changes before we even consciously realize what's happening in our environment. And so because our breath is the first thing that changes, it could be the first tool that we turn to change our physiology. So our breath is a two-way street, and it's something that we can consciously override to change how we want to feel. So it's a very powerful tool. I refer to it as the steering wheel of the nervous system.
Yeah. So I have a couple questions. I kind of want to maybe just go back to the basics of, it might sound so rudimentary, but there's this, we all know oxygen's important. We all know that we can't live without it. We can live, quite a while without food, even quite a while without water, but we can't live without oxygen. So we all know this. But we all know we breathe every day or we wouldn't be alive. And we all know our air quality might not be that great, but for the most part, most people, 98% of people, are not consciously thinking about how they're breathing because we're doing it all day long. We're not thinking about it. So what would you say to people to help them understand why, one, being conscious of it, and two, actually doing something about it, like putting something in practice in today's world needs to happen. It needs to be done. And then the follow-up question would be, we've talked about nasal breathing versus mouth breathing, but that's not all there is to it. There's all kinds of things we can do to oxygenate the body. We can go to clinics and spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars doing HBOT, right? Hyperbaric oxygen therapy, EBU, some ozone, blood ozonation. Like there's all kinds of things we can do, but we can also learn breathing techniques we can do for free, right? So could you address those two things? One, hey, we're taking breathing for granted. Why is it important to actually proactively do something about it? And then two, what else can we do besides just learning this, nose versus mouth breathing concept?
Yeah, thank you. A great question. So first and foremost, I think when we look at breath outside the context of oxygenation and gaseous exchange, that helps us understand that our Creator designed us in such a way that simplicity is really often the answer, right? So I know you're a big proponent of fasting, right? So what's simpler when it comes to diet than not eating, right? That's how much more simple does it get?
Yeah.
What's simpler than regulating our circadian rhythm than just getting outside and standing outside, right? What's simpler than getting free electrons, which is how we make ATP, than just putting your bare feet on the ground? So we're all looking for and praying for and wishing for, simple solutions. And what I've learned is that, through Da Vinci's work and Steve Jobs echoed this, and I'm going to echo it to keep this message going, is that the greatest sophistication is simplicity. So our current medical paradigm is trying to match the complexity of the body in order to manipulate it, right? So every year, this is not a trick question, but is there more research or less research happening every year? More, which means we actually know less, right? Because if we knew everything, there'd be no research happening, right? Because we would know everything. So the joke, the cosmic joke that Bruce Lipton refers to it as, is that we're constantly trying to match the body's complexity, only to realize that we know nothing. Right. It's like we know less every year instead of more. But I do know that the body is sophisticated. That's why it's so hard to match its complexity, which means that it should be easy to take care of. Right. So if the solutions that any practitioner is providing you are complicated, then they're probably trying to manipulate. But if they are simple, then they're celebrating the sophistication of the body. Wow.
That's
And so
profound.
to me, that's always a red flag. Is it simple? Can anyone do it? Yes, then it's God's form of healing.
Mm-hmm.
But if only a limited few people can do it, then it's not innate healing.
Mm.
So breath is one of those things that globally affects many systems in our body. So our autonomic nervous system is impacted by our breath. Our biggest lymph nodes in our body are underneath our diaphragm. So every time our diaphragm moves up and down, the 23,000 times a day it does that, it's pumping the lymphatic system. Our diaphragm is referred to as our second heart. Mm-hmm. It's the only muscle that works 24/7 that we have conscious control over. So the heart's always pumping. However, we can't directly control our heart. However, we can indirectly control our heart rate by controlling our breath and controlling our diaphragm. And so the diaphragm is one of those muscles that helps the heart, helps the lymphatic system. But what it also does is it also helps the myofascial matrix. The myofascial matrix is a hydrostatic system. It kind of looks like that image behind you, where everything in our body is connected through this spider web-like system. And so the tip of our toes is connected to the tip of our nose, and all the way up into all of our dura mater, and everything is all interconnected. Mm-hmm. And the master regulator of the static pressure of that system, because it's a hydraulic system, which means it maintains static pressure, is the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is responsible for that system as well. Mm-hmm. So if our diaphragm becomes dysfunctional, think of a Lyme patient, right? Now their lymphatics go downhill, the respiratory system goes downhill, and guess what? So does their myofascial system. And so that's why they're constantly in chronic pain, because they can't maintain proper functioning in that system. Wow. Our diaphragm also stores a lot of our trauma. So this is why when people go through different types of breathing techniques, they can release their trauma. Mm-hmm. Our emotions are also expressed through diaphragmatic rhythms. So when you cry, right, your diaphragm is moving up and down at a specific frequency, which is creating the emotion. When you laugh, your diaphragm's creating a certain rhythm, which is creating emotion. When you yawn, right, that's because you're probably not belly breathing, so your body yawns. When you feel a sense of relief, you sigh, right? So there's an actual physical change that's happening in our breath that's actually creating a corresponding physiological shift in our body. Mm-hmm. The runner's high, for example, is not from the running, it's actually from the breathing. So you could be sitting in your chair and I could show you how to create a runner's high. So breathing impacts so many different areas. Now the other thing that impacts is our immune system. So this takes us to why we breathe in through our nose versus through our mouth. So the immune system doesn't start in our GI system. Our immune system actually starts in our nose. Because remember, we're intaking 30 pounds of air every day, right? More than the food that we're eating. And so what our nose does is it pressurizes the air. That's why you're always going to feel more resistance breathing in through your nose, because your nose takes that air through a set of turbinades, slows down the air intentionally so it could properly filter the air. And so we have cilia that filter the air. We have a mucous membrane that filters the air. The mucous membrane produces nitric oxide, assuming we have a healthy oral microbiome. Nitric oxide has many functions. One of its functions is to kill pathogens, so it's antiviral, antibacterial. It also helps dilate our blood vessels, so we're able to get more blood flow into the microcirculatory system, right? Our brain is the hardest place to get blood to because we're working against gravity, and we have tiny capillaries in our brain, as well as our fingertips, tip of our nose, and our genitals. Those are the hardest places to get blood to. The other thing nitric oxide does is it dilates our blood vessels, so it can, in effect, help us lower blood pressure. So now our cardiovascular system doesn't have to work as hard in order to circulate that blood. So we get better immune function, we get better circulation, we lower our blood pressure, and we improve our sexual health, and we improve our metabolic health just by simply breathing through our nose. Breathing through our nose increases nitric oxide production by 6-fold versus breathing through the mouth. Wow. And then breathing through our nose and humming increases nitric oxide production by 15-fold. So you can actually therapeutically increase nitric oxide just by doing something as simple, again, going back to that term simple, as humming. Right. The interesting thing about breathing through our nose is it also doesn't just pressurize the air, but it temperature regulates the air, moisture regulates the air, and it removes the particulate from the air as well. So you're getting this perfected air coming into the lungs. And remember, our lungs have a microbiome. So when we breathe in through our nose, we're not bringing in this dirty air in, we're bringing in this purified air versus breathing through our mouth, which if you ask any microbiologist is the dirtiest part of our body. So a couple things happen. One, we're creating stress on our lung microbiome and creating imbalances and dysbiosis in there by breathing through our mouth. Secondly, what we're doing is we're drying out the saliva, which is then creating a disrupted microbiome. And then, when our oral microbiome is disrupted, we're swallowing that bacteria, it's ending up in our digestive system, so on and so forth. So big shifts can take place when we simply start breathing through our nose instead of our mouth. And mouth breathing causes bad breath. Mouth breathing is a number one cause of cavities. It's not sugar like we've been led to believe.
Right.
And then mouth breathing also leads to, a change in our facial structure as well. And, mouth breathing changes the way food tastes. So when somebody breathes through their mouth, it takes more sugar for them to taste the same level of sweetness. Wow. So just by changing the way we breathe, we change the way food tastes as well. And you know what? It's funny because it is mind blowing, but it's so obvious.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And once people see it through this lens, they start to realize, oh my God, like all I have to do is breathe through my nose and I get all of these benefits.
Right.
Right. Like how much simpler could God have made it for us?
Totally. Yeah. It's almost like we were designed really, really, really well. And we've kind of forgotten. I wonder how many supplements we could eliminate if we learned how to breathe through our nose properly, huh?
Dude, you know how many industries would crumble to the ground
Right.
if we learned
including
how to
the medical industry?
Most of them.
Yeah.
Right. I
crazy.
mean, here's the thing. The word doctor means teacher. Right. So if you're a teacher, you will always have a job because there will always be people to teach these practices to.
Right.
But if we're peddlers and pill pushers, right, then we could feel threatened by educated and informed people. I know you love to educate people. I know I love to educate people. So I'm always going to have a job. Right. I'll never be in a position where I'm not of use anymore. Right. Whereas the traditional medical industry, I mean, that can come crumbling to the ground because they don't teach people anything.
Right.
So there's no value when people are healthy to them. Whereas to us, it's extremely valuable because the way people get healthy is by learning from teachers who are willing to teach them. Right. And coaches who are willing to coach them through the process.
Amen. So would you mind giving us some tools, some resources, some practical things that people can do to oxygenate their bodies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a whole bunch of resources that I know we're going to be sharing with people. So if they go to breathworkwithsachin.com and just enter their information, I'm going to send them all these free tools that I've created because I believe that the best things in life are free. And I just feel like this is my soul's purpose. So this is a passion project for me to get this information out there. So there's keynotes in there. I'll even share the presentations if people want them. And the slideshows. I've got a stop snoring guide that I developed. I've got a bunch of notes I took from James Nestor's retreat that I went to. And I just created a new guide called Breathe Like This, Not That. And in that guide, I share with you exactly how to breathe for whatever situation you're in or how to shift your physiology. So if you want to feel more energy, there's a way to breathe. If you want to feel more relaxed before you go to bed, there's a way to breathe. If you want to feel more focused, there's a way to breathe. So just like people always ask me, what's the best way to breathe? And so the best way to breathe is to ensure that your breath matches your activity, right? So if I'm running, I don't want to be taking slow sips of air, right? I want to be breathing in and out through my mouth really fast because that movement of air in and out is only going to be very short-lived because you could only go 10 out of 10 full out sprint for maybe 30 to 40 seconds to escape whatever danger you're in. But then you're going to go back to nasal breathing. So there's always a way to breathe for every situation. So how do I breathe during these conversations? How do I breathe when I'm checking email? How do I breathe when I wake up and I want more energy? How do I breathe when I don't want to drink coffee, but I need more energy in the afternoon? How do I breathe before dinner? All of that is outlined in that guide. So
wow, awesome.
there's so many different ways, but I want to share with people how to breathe for most of the day. So when in doubt, we refer to this breathing technique, and it's referred to as rather coherence breathing. And it's really simple. It's embarrassingly simple, which is one of the criteria that I have for making recommendations. It's got to be embarrassingly simple, almost so simple that you don't believe it's going to do anything.
Right.
And what's cool about breathing is you can measure it. So if you want to get your blood pressure cuff out, you can measure before and after. If you want to measure on your Aura ring, like I have here, you can measure your HRV and resting heart rate and see how that changes.
Right.
You can measure skin temperature and see how that changes. You can measure EKGs if you have a Muse device, and you can see how that changes. There's so many different ways, easy, affordable, accessible ways. If you're that person that needs evidence and proof, objective evidence and proof, there's so many ways to measure this. However, you'll also feel different as well. And it doesn't take long to shift, right? Remember, the breath is one of the fastest ways to change our physiology. Our body already uses it, so we can use it consciously. So really simple. We're going to sit up in a comfortable position. Our belly is relaxed. In Western culture, we have an obsession with a rigid abdomen and a six-pack, which is actually the opposite of what you want. You want a soft belly,
right?
Okay. And so nice soft belly, relaxing the abdomen. And then we're simply going to place our tongue in the roof of our mouth. So our tip of our tongue is just behind our front two teeth. Behind our front two teeth is a magic button. So if you're ever feeling stressed out, just place your tongue gently at the roof of your mouth. Children, they suck their thumb, pushes that magic button. They use a pacifier, pushes that magic button. The mother's nipple pushes that magic button. Right. And so first things first is we put our tongue in the roof of our mouth and then gently lay the rest of it across the roof of our mouth if it's comfortable. And so your tongue is flat. Your tongue is also a postural muscle, pound for pound. It's the strongest muscle in your body. And believe it or not, your tongue connects all the way to the back or the top of your shoulder blades.
Wow. So
it's has a very diffuse distribution. And your tongue connects all the way to the tip of your toes through the myofascial system. Right. So the tongue plays a very important role in our health. And when your tongue is positioned correctly, if you open your mouth and try to breathe through your mouth, you'll notice that you can't, because your tongue in that position kind of seals the mouth. Okay. Next, we're going to take a breath in through our nose for a count of 6. And we're going to exhale for a count of 6. So we can do this together. Tongue at the roof of the mouth. Inhale for a count of 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you're doing this along with us, you probably already feel relaxed. You already probably feel time bending and slowing down. And you do that for 3 to 5 minutes. And I tell you what, you're going to feel like a different human being. Wow. Now, some people might ask, like, how do I shift my state? So if I'm having a bad day, let's say I get home, I just got off an annoying phone call, or I'm feeling stressed out because I'm running behind, or I've got some things to do. It might be hard to shift into that 6-second breath. So what we do is we encourage people to do something called a physiologic sigh. And a physiologic sigh is the fastest way to shift into a relaxed state. And the way we do that is actually, again, embarrassingly simple. So again, we're going to sit up nice and straight. I'll walk you through this and we can do a few together. You'll breathe in, tongue at the roof of the mouth. You'll breathe in through your nose. Breathe into the belly first. So fill the belly up. You'll take you'll continue breathing into the chest and then into the apex of the lungs, so the top of the shoulders, and just relax your shoulders, drop them and hold there. And you can now squeeze your pelvic floor. That's going to draw, your pelvic floor is basically another diaphragm in your pelvis. So it's going to draw up. And when you feel ready to, you can release, drop your tongue and release with an audible sigh, exhaling all the way out. Let it all the way out. And then you're going to breathe in again through the nose, into the belly, into the lungs, into the chest, into the top of the shoulders. And now we can take a few more sips at the top through our mouth. hold it, squeeze your pelvic floor. And on the count of 3, you're going to release with an audible sigh. 1, 2, 3, release. So what we're doing is we're essentially,
I feel that already.
yeah, it makes a huge difference. You do that, 2 to 3 times, up to 3 to 5 minutes, depending on what you need, and you will feel that shift. And it makes it easier to go into that 6-second in, 6-second out breath.
Awesome.
So that's called a physiologic sigh. And sighing is something that we do when we feel a sense of relief, right? So we feel the relief and then we sigh. But what if we wanted to feel the relief? We could sigh first. And then we would exaggerate the sigh. Like nobody sighs like the way we just did, right? We're exaggerating, we're leaning into that built-in mechanism, exaggerating it for the effect so that we could create the chemistry and the emotion of that feeling of relaxation. Yeah. So if you're a clinician, this could be a great breathing technique that you have your clients do coming in off the streets. They're probably under stress, fighting traffic, getting on that Zoom call. Maybe the link wasn't working. God knows what's happening in their life. This is a great way for you and them to hit the reset button. It's a great teaching opportunity for you as a clinician, and it's a great way to shift them into a state where they can learn and grow. Because, if they're stuck in sympathetic dominance while they're talking to you, you may as well be on mute while you're talking because you're not going to hear anything.
Yeah.
So getting people into the right state is very important as a clinician, but also, if you're hosting a meeting, if you're hosting a webinar, like this is something that we do with our trainings because I want people to learn what I'm going to share with them and absorb and be able to, implement what I'm going to share with them. And they need to be in the right state in order to be able to do that. Yeah. And then another breathing technique, I'll share 2 more. Okay. And then the others you can get in the guide. So another breathing technique is, how do I fall asleep faster, right? People want to know, how do I drift off at night? So there's a breathing technique that Andrew Weil developed, or at least it's attributed to him, and it's called 4-7-8 breath. So you breathe in for a count of 4, again, breathing in through the nose. And in this case, we're going to breathe out through the nose as well. So breathe in through the nose for a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, and then exhale for a count of 8. Okay. So just a general rule of thumb, if we want to feel balanced, we breathe in and out at the same rate. So the coherence breathing, the first technique I shared with you, that's 6 in, 6 out. That's going to balance our sympathetic and parasympathetic system.
Right.
When we're trying to sleep, that's a more parasympathetic activity. So in that case, what we would do is we would breathe in for a count of 4, and then our exhale would be for a total of 15 seconds, right? The 7 seconds at the top that we're holding and the 8 seconds that we're releasing. So we're lengthening the exhale, putting us into a more parasympathetic state.
Right.
A technique that I coined, I believe, at least, unless somebody else tells me otherwise, is called parachute breath. So we all remember playing with a parachute when we were young and throwing that parachute up in the air in a big circle. And it goes up. It takes about 4 seconds for it to go up and hit the apex, and then it slowly starts coming down. Right. And so what I have people do is visualize that 4-second inhale as the parachute going up. There's always going to be a little pause at the top as it gets to the very top. And then just imagine all that air coming out of your lungs, like the parachute coming down and melting into your bed. And so it's a great visual tool. You don't have to count anything. It's more of a visual exercise. So for people who kind of get stuck in their head with the counting, they can use this as a visual guide to help them fall asleep faster. And then one more technique I'll share is called the bellows breath. We also call this yogic coffee. Some people call it coffee breath, which doesn't sound very appetizing. So yogic coffee is a great alternative to a cup of coffee or a stimulant, especially if you're avoiding stimulants or if you're not wanting to drink them too late into the evening, but you need more energy to get through the day. So this is a simple technique. It's called bellows breath or Bhakshrika breath. And you've probably, if you've ever been to Tony Robbins, they do this there. Simply, you're going to place your hands to your side, make a gentle fist, and then we're going to do rapid inhales and exhales. You can use your mouth or your nose, whatever you prefer. You can breathe in and out through your nose. You can breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, or you can do this in and out through your mouth, whatever is most comfortable, whatever allows you to have the most fun doing this. And then, so we'll take a rapid inhale We'll throw our arms up in the air and do a rapid exhale as we forcefully bring our arms down. Perfect. So you would just bring your arms down to here, just to your side of your shoulders,
Okay.
just like that. And so you would do this 30 times, and you would do 30 repetitions, 3 sets with 30 seconds in between. And if you had a heart rate monitor on, you would see your heart rate go up like 40 beats. You would see your blood pressure go up. So if you have uncontrolled high blood pressure, you wouldn't want to do this.
Right.
However, this is a great way to increase adrenaline in the body. So you'll feel a jolt of energy. So you could do this when you wake up in the morning if you need a lift. You could do it in the afternoon if you need a bit of a boost in the afternoon to have more energy.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. That was powerful. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom and knowledge, offering things to people for free to help them to change their lives. There's something I need to address just kind of here at the end. Really, for my audience, I'm pretty open about my faith and what I believe, and it kind of is a little bit shocking to me, I guess I could say, how many people think that breath work is, I don't even know what the word is, but weird or wrong or dangerous, or this term new age, or that you're getting involved in some kind of voodoo weird stuff or whatever. And anyway, I just feel like, for the sake of my audience and where I stand, I like to be open and honest about where I stand, because I don't like knowing where people don't stand on something. I would rather you just tell me what you think, what you believe, who you are, because it can tell me if I'm going to align with that or not. But I love Genesis 2:7 that says, "The Lord God formed man out of dust of the earth and breathed into him the breath of life." And so there's really nothing more powerful, more fundamental to creation, to the existence of God, to life on this earth than breath and oxygen. And I think using different techniques and tools to increase our oxygen, to heal our bodies, to bring life into our bodies is a godly thing to do. It's not a weird thing to do. It's not a religious thing. It's a life-giving thing. So anyway, I just felt like I needed to share that just for the sake of my audience, so everybody knows what I believe and where I stand.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing it. And just real quick, I just want people to know we scratched the surface of the surface today.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of depth to this dialogue and conversation. One other tip that I want to give people is that there's breath work that you do for 10 minutes, right? Like Wim Hof breathing or elemental breathing, and there's different breathing techniques that you can do. What I want people to focus on is, how are they breathing those other 1,430 minutes of the day?
Yeah.
So that's what I like to focus on, is the things that we actually don't even call breath work, but just breathing. And one tip I want to leave people with that I think, would be dismissed if we didn't talk about it, was nighttime breathing. And one really simple technique that people can do is something they call mouth taping,
right,
or chin strapping.
Yep.
So you just simply place a piece of surgical tape over your mouth like this, keeps your jaw relaxed and your mouth in a closed position, correctly positions your tongue, allows you to breathe in and out through your nose without your mouth falling open. Or you can get a chin strap that keeps your mouth in that closed position as well, if you don't like the idea of taping your mouth closed.
Yeah.
So that one thing can be transformational in people's blood sugars, people's abilities to dream again, people's blood pressure, because oral breathing versus nasal breathing changes our fluid content in our body. It also will change significantly their quality of life, because their partnerships will improve, their sexual health will improve, not disrupting your partner because you're less likely to snore. I mean, there's so many implications of it. So in addition to the different techniques that we talked about, just to make sure you're mouth taping as well, because that can make a huge difference in one's health.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that as well, and all the tips and tricks you gave us. Just such a powerful concept. Like you said, we barely scratched the surface. We could talk about this for hours, but we do need to wrap up. So I thank you, Sachin, for this enlightening conversation that whoever watches this, I know that I know that I know will be impacted, at least by the understanding of it. And then if they implement any of this into their lives, their patient's life, their own life, their family's life, their children's life, there will be transformational changes in their health in so many ways. And that's our goal, right? Like you said, doctors as teachers, to teach, educate, bring people back to God, the simplicity of creation and design. Let's get away from the complication of complicated medical language and making people feel inferior and that they don't know anything. And let's empower people, let's educate people. That's our mission. I know yours as well. And so thank you for helping us do that today. I think we achieved that today. And I thank you, Sachin, once again for your time and your dedication and commitment to helping and loving others well.
Thank you, my friend. It's an absolute pleasure and honor.